Good afternoon to all of you. I hope you had a good lunch. So let's talk testing with Selenium. First of all, I'd like to know that how many of you are developers? And how many of you are testers? Okay, quite a good ratio. So the developers can start testing and the testers may continue testing, I guess. So my first question to all of you is, why do you think testing is important? Can any of you from the front rows answer this? Okay. Okay. Great. So, all of us use softwares. And many of us must have experienced that our software is not working desirably. On an individual level, it may just lead to a little bit of frustration. But on an organization level, it may lead to huge losses. A human can make mistake or an error, and when that particular mistake or an error is included in a program code, it becomes a defect. And when that program code is executed, it may lead to a failure of the software application. With the help of testing, we measure the quality of our software. When we test a software, we find bugs and all, and when the bugs get fixed, the quality of our software improves. Now, one may think of manual testing as an approach for testing. A manual tester may have to check a lot of databases, fill in a lot of forms, and check the outputs on the screen. And once a project expands, the regression testing simply becomes uncontrolled. So, one should move to test automation. Test automation is nothing but the use of testing tool to control the execution of tests, to compare the actual outcomes against the expected outcomes, and to report the test status, whether the test case passed or failed. Automated testing should be applied to applications which may involve areas that need to be tested frequently. Test automation gives us better access to information about the tests that we have carried on. It allows us to have better consistency regarding the tests because the tests are carried on by a tool which carries all the tests in a sequence. We have a lot of tools in the market to do test automation, but the tool that we are going to talk about is Selenium. Selenium automates web browsers. It is an open source tool and does not involve any cost. Selenium can be controlled by many programming languages such as C#, Java, Perl, Ruby, and of course our favorite Python. It supports many browsers as in Firefox, IE, Chrome. Selenium can be used with different testing frameworks. Now you may be wondering, why do we need a testing framework when Selenium is there? A testing framework is needed to control the execution of tests. The programming language that we'll be using is Python, and the testing framework is unit test. Unit test is the inbuilt Python's library for testing. It's a testing framework. Now that we've talked a little about test automation and a little about Selenium, we'll talk about test automation with Selenium. Selenium tests pages. It tests them by loading pages and performing certain stuff on them, just like it's a person. Isn't that pretty human? Being human? Selenium helps you in regression testing. Testing if a particular bug fix did not introduce any new bugs into our code, and that testing is called as regression testing. Selenium helps you to validate the application flow. It allows you to create test suites. A test suite is a combination of different test cases. You may have different sections or modules in your application, and you may need to run a particular set of tests together and make it as a suite. Selenium allows you to generate reports. HTML test reports you can generate. Now, the first is that how to start. The first step is that you need to install Selenium, which is very simple. You just need to do a pip install Selenium and you're all set to write your scripts. But if you are new to programming and you are a newbie, I would say you should start with the record and play with Selenium IDE. Selenium IDE is a component of the Selenium project. It is an integrated development environment. It is a record and playback tool which allows you to record scripts and play them and do certain assertions. This is a small snapshot of the Selenium IDE, wherein you have a click to record button, the red button that you can see. You may browse on your application and start recording. You can open the URL, you can type in whatever you want to send, and you can do some assertions. You may stop your script, play it again, and it will perform all the actions and do the assertions. Now, the one good thing about Selenium is that it helps you convert your code. The default format is HTML. Convert your code into different languages. As you can see, we have support for Ruby, Python, Java, and C#. Since you're a newbie and you don't want to write the structure, the layout for your code, as in what all necessary imports you need to do, how to start with the class, how to write the setup method, so Selenium IDE helps you with this. Now we select our Python WebDriver format and the code gets converted with just a click of a button. Now we look how does a Selenium script looks like. We're using WebDriver, which is a component of Selenium. The first thing that we need to do is we need to import the WebDriver module from the Selenium. Then we import the unit test testing framework, which we require for the execution of tests that I just talked about, that we'll be using the unit test testing framework. Next, a test class is created by subclassing the test case class of unit test testing framework. The test case class is a class of the unit test testing framework which allows you as in the test fixtures, the basically the initializations that are required before any test. So you define the setup method, which is a method. The test runner will identify that this is a method which needs to be run before the test case. In the first step, we create an instance of the Firefox WebDriver. We use the get method to navigate to a particular URL. The test case is defined by a naming convention which starts with a name test underscore, which helps the test runner to identify that this is a test case. You can write your test case here. Then you have a tear down method where you need to close your browser. So you can use the quit method provided. The final block represents the execution of the test. In place of unit test.main, we can also use the text runner and maybe the runner provided by the HTML test runner.py. Now we'll see how to build an approach towards testing. When you're given an application to test, how should you think about that? How am I supposed to proceed? The first thing is understand the functionality of the web application that you are just about to test. Make a run through the application and understand the behavior of your application. Second, you need to write a test plan and you need to write test cases for your application. Now, once you're done with writing all the test cases, you need to decide which test cases to automate. There may be certain factors that you need to consider while you are deciding that which are the test cases that you'll automate. A test case maybe which involves a lot of test data, test input data would be required to automate. A test case which may be required to test it frequently would require an automation. Next. Now you're done with which all test cases you're going to automate. We'll inspect the UI elements accordingly. Now, what do you understand by inspecting the UI elements? Supposedly, you have an application wherein some text is highlighted on the page and you want to make an assertion for that. So, Selenium provides you with certain methods for assertions, as in find element by ID, XPath, class, CSS, tag name, and 2 or 3 others. You can also do it. You need to decide that which is the attribute or which is the tag, or how are you going to select your element in order to test that. Now, once you're done with inspecting the UI elements accordingly, that what method provided by the Selenium WebDriver you're going to use, you may start writing your test script. Now you all must have used GitHub and must have seen the code search functionality provided by GitHub, wherein you have that you type something, supposedly you type echo, and you get the output in a highlighted format where the echo keyword is highlighted in all of your search. So I'll show you a sample application which is very minimal functionality. Okay, so this is my sample application which just does a very little of stuff. It just has one filter, wherein if I select this filter, it will filter all the respective labels. Okay, and if I search for supposedly echo, it will give me a result of echo in the highlighted format. If I search for print, it will give me a corresponding result. Now we talked about inspecting the UI elements. So how do we inspect the UI elements? Now I need to verify that in this, the highlighted keyword needs to be there. So I right click on that element and I do an inspect with Firebug. And here I see that this particular element is present in a class called HL. So I hold all these elements with the class. Now this is one search box wherein I am putting my text, the test input data. So I need to know that which element of the DOM it's present with. So I again do an inspect with element and I find different attributes with the input. And ID, you all know that each element has a unique ID on an HTML page. So I select ID for this particular search box. This is about, this is a sample where this has got just the minimal functionality. So now moving back. Now, we'll talk about certain general test cases that you may need to automate to verify if the URL of the application is correct or not, to verify if the particular checkbox is selected or not, to verify if what we searched for is gives us the correct results or not, to verify if pagination, which is a very common feature in all of the applications, web applications that we see on web. So these are certain common test cases that one may come across. Now we'll have a look at some of the sample code. The first case that we'll consider is search. What I searched for, did I get the correct results or not? For a functionality such as search, it is very important for you to create an input test data. You need to decide what is the format that you're going to choose for your input test data. Now here I decide that I'll keep my input test data in a JSON format, and the above is a JSON format file which contains my test data. I have my test data as echo, print and hello world. Now you all remember I showed you the Selenium script layout, and this code snippet is just with the test case for search. Now before you start writing your script, it is very important for you to import all the necessary modules. Since here we are using a JSON format, so we'll import the JSON module which would be required. We'll supposedly you're using a config file, you may import the config parser, and you need to import the Selenium WebDriver. You need to import the unit test module. Okay, start. Firstly, I'll load my JSON data file. I'll hold each element in an array. I loop through that array. This is the keyword which search_text contains all my test data one by one. Now I'll find my search box. That where do I need to feed this data? Wherein I find it using find element by ID. Now I need to ensure that my search box needs to be clear. So I use the clear method to clear out. Then I use the method send keys, which sends that particular data into that search box. Now I click on the search button and I find that search button using the method find element by name, and I perform a click action on it. Now as we just saw that our elements are present in the class HL, so I use find elements. I get all the elements which are highlighted. I hold that into an array. I extract the text out of that particular object and I make it a set. Set, I made it just to optimize my code and to reduce the computation time. Now I loop through it again and I perform an assert equal method which is provided by the unit test, which does an assertion, as in what I searched for and what I extracted out of my by using Selenium WebDriver API. Does it match or not? If it does not match, I get an error and the test case fails, saying that the search result does not match. Moving on to the next test case that I'll consider is a checkbox selection. Whether a particular checkbox is selected or not. First thing, I inspect the elements and I find that my checkbox is present with an ID. It has an ID. I hold that element with an ID and I say find element by ID. Now I use the method assert true of unit test module and I check if the condition is true or not. Checkbox is selected is a method provided that whether that particular checkbox is selected or not is enabled, whether that particular checkbox is enabled or disabled. Now you may be figuring out why do I have a try block and why did I keep my code in a try accept block. This is just to give you an insight into a new section that it is very important for you to handle the Selenium errors which may or may not occur. Supposedly there may be a case wherein the checkbox element that you are trying to find by ID may not be present on the page. So it will throw an exception saying no such element exception. It's very important for you to catch those exceptions so that your test case does not end up giving you errors. The next that we'll consider is for pagination. This is a little complicated. You may not find all the elements present on the page by some link text or some tag name. So what I do for my app, for the sample app that I did, I hold all the element by a class name. I define a regular expression wherein with that object I extract all the numbers as in the previous 1, 2, 3, the last page number and the next keyword. I hold that into an array and the test case could be wherein I need to verify if the previous button is disabled or not. I find that it's present by a class name. I extract it by text, the array that I found with all the elements, and I do an assert equal. Now this could be done where the page number 1 is active or not. Similarly, you can proceed with the class name where your next element is active or not. On the last page, you may also need to verify if your pagination is correct. Supposedly, you have 2200 results and you decide to display just 10 results. So what is the number of pages coming up? You may apply a logic, a Python logic for that, where you can extract hold that total number of results and the last page number which is there, and do the assertions accordingly. Moving ahead, we have how to maintain your scripts. You may keep on going writing your test scripts, but you may end up at a point where you have a huge number of test scripts and it is difficult for you to manage. There may be a case wherein you have a different URL for where your application is being deployed. So you are not going to open each of your test script and change the URL in order to use the same test script for that particular application to be tested. So I would say it is very important for you to structure your code well. You must have all the scripts structured. You should have a data folder which will contain all your test input data, as in all the JSON files. You must have a lib folder which will contain all your test scripts, the logic that you are defining for running your test case. You must have a main file which will contain, which is basically to execute your test cases and will contain what all test cases are there. You can use a config file to define the URL, certain things like where do you need to keep your logs, a path to a logs folder, the reports folder, certain paths you can specify in your config file. You should have a logs folder which will contain all the logs that what all actions and events have taken place in your test case. You must have a reports folder which will contain the reports, detailed reports for your test case. And always try and follow the dry principle. Do not repeat yourself. It helps you maintain your code better. Make smaller functions, make smaller methods, and write your test case. Use the logging module to keep track of the events that are taking place in your test run. Test reports. You developer writes the code, the tester tests it, but the stakeholder, the project stakeholder, may not want to look at your code or may not have time to sit with you and look at your test run. He would definitely like to have a look at your test report. So it is very important for you to generate test reports. You can generate your test reports using HTML testrunner.py. This is an extension to the Python's built-in unit test testing framework. This is a sample test report where you have a start time, when did you conduct your test, the duration of your test case, how much time did your test case take to run, the status, how many test cases passed, how many test cases failed, the URL on which you conducted your test, the browser on which you conducted your test, that's Firefox. You may have a small description about your application on the top. You may have, you should write your test case in your test report, that what was the test case that was performed by you. And a must is to have a status, whether your test case passed or your test case failed. And the total count is important. Just to give a more clarification and to make it more descriptive, you can add colors so that it's clear to the eye that your past test cases are in green and your failed ones are in red. Now I'll show you a small demo which will give you a test case for two test cases, whether a particular filter does the filter correctly or not, and whether what I searched for is gives me the exact results or not. So firstly, we'll have a look at the structure of the code, which I just talked about, that you must have a config file, you must have a data folder which will contain all your data. I have a lib folder wherein my first file is filter.py, which contains my test case for the filter thing. Then I've used HTML test runner.py in order to be able to generate HTML reports. Then I have report description.py, which is a small dictionary that what do I need to write in the description of a report, and I've linked it to my main script. Then I have search.py, which is again my test case. Then I have testcases.py, which is again a dictionary which says that what is my test case and I need to insert it into my test report. I again have a logs folder, I have the main script, and I have the reports folder. For this particular test case, I have used the config the argument parser thing, and we have different arguments. If I end up doing this, it will show me what arguments can I use. So I'll run my test case as a suit, wherein all the both the test cases will run. Maybe the Firefox is taking some time to open. My first test case is with what I searched for, whether it is correct or not. And the second test case is with the filter. This is the same demo application with which I showed you the inspect element thing. Now our test cases have passed, and the time taken for the test cases was 27 seconds. And now we'll have a look at the report that was generated. So this is the report sample report that was generated for my test case, and here I see my both the test cases to verify if the search results match the exact query string. And I have a detail which says what I verified the results for 3 cases, that is echo, print, and hello world. And another one, if the filter worked for the label correctly. The label selected for filter was label 1, and hence my filter selection was verified. Moving back, I would sum up by talking about some of the best practices that one should follow. Always create a good quality test input data. It is very important for you to have a good quality test data in order to have a complete testing of your application, to decide which format are you going to keep your test data in. Follow the dry principle. Use the logging module to capture the events that are being taking place. Include a code to handle the Selenium errors, which may not occur. There are different type of exceptions that may come with Selenium. That is, you may have no such element present, assertion errors, stuff like that. There's a big list in the documentation you can go through. Design a stable logic for your test case, which is irresistible to the change in UI. Always think from the developer's perspective that what element could he change. Prefer using IDE and for selecting the elements. And do not forget to generate test reports for your test cases. That's it. And any questions if you have?
Hello. Does it support JavaScript, embedded JavaScript in HTML?
Sorry?
Does Selenium support parsing JavaScript in
Yes.
HTML?
You can use a method called as execute script, and you can parse your JavaScript code or your jQuery things inside that, and you can execute any of your JavaScript functions if you want.
Thank you.
So does it support only Firefox or?
No, it supports different browsers. You can run your tests on Chrome, and you can run your test on IE. Firefox is the most easily supported.
So they have to be installed on the same system, right, along with Selenium?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, nice presentation first of all.
Thank you.
I have two questions. First is, I have worked a little bit with Selenium. So with working with Selenium WebDriver and Python, do you have inbuilt support for a test framework called as Ant? Is that something that you have explored?
Ant has a support with Java more, and I did not explore it with Python.
Okay.
But with Java, I'm sure that it has a support.
Correct.
For Python, I'm not sure. I can check it and get back to you.
Okay. My second question is, it is actually a subject in itself called as, keyword-driven testing.
Okay.
So, or behavioral-driven testing. So, do you know any robust framework, since you are working with Selenium WebDriver for web testing with Python? Do you know a good robust framework which is maybe in already developed or in progress of development?
Yeah, you can use
Python,
Robo.
yeah.
There's one framework called as Robo framework.
Correct. I've gone through that. Apart from that, have you worked or explored any of them?
No, I have not explored, but there's a framework, Nose framework, and there's a py.test framework which you can use with Python, and it has a good support.
Okay, so Robo is a good start for keyword-driven testing in with Python and Selenium, right?
For keyword-driven, you can proceed. If you don't wish to make separate JSON files and all, it's your choice.
Okay, thanks a lot.
It has a different support wherein you can write your keywords and all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. My doubt is regarding suppose I have a Flash designed website. Can I automate using that Selenium?
I cannot. You're not audible.
I have developed using the Flash website. Can I automate using Selenium?
No, Flash is not supported by Selenium.
Okay, thanks.
The modern browsers, they're kind of getting heavier, like Firefox, Chrome. Like I ran some tests with Selenium, so it had quite some latency loading the browsers for each test method. So is there some kind of lesser command line browser, something which will make my tests run faster, something like that, you know of?
Maybe you can use parallel testing, wherein you can use another component that is Selenium Grid, where you can run your tests in parallel. Yeah, you can use a headless browser in that case.
My purpose. Okay. Okay, cool. That's all.
Hi. So sometimes I don't know how long it will take for my results to come. So how do I set a? So how does Selenium wait for the timeout, or how do I deal with those timeouts?
Okay. For dealing with the timeouts, you need to. What?
But there's no clean way to do this.
Yeah, there's a Selenium supports that method called as execute script, wherein you can use. Supposedly there are a lot of jQuery calls going on. So what you can do is jQuery. You can use the method active. If it is 0, if there are no connections going on, if it's 0, then you can break your code and proceed, or else you can give a sleep, ask it to wait more. You can put the while conditions and all. You need to make your code that way. It's Python.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How can we have a JavaScript error handling, logging, and then checking it later?
You can use the logging module in order to capture all your events. And whenever there's an error, you put it in a try and except block. There's a list of exceptions that Selenium gives. No such element exception and all such likes of that. So you can put it in your except, and you can basically structure your code in that way.
No, that is for the Selenium errors. I'm talking about JavaScript errors. I mean,
JavaScript errors, like what do you mean to say? Error as in of what kind?
okay.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for a great introduction for Selenium. So I run a small IT services shop where we specialize on Python and Django development, and we do a lot of testing on the back end. And we're not doing testing using Selenium yet. So just wanted to understand that how should we think about dividing a test between Selenium versus backend testing, and do you have any data from customers or real life test cases? Like what kind of bugs do people normally find with Selenium?
What kind of bugs?
Yeah, what kind of bugs do people normally end up finding with Selenium? Typically, not theoretically, like in real life applications, what kind of bugs do people find?
Selenium is basically used for testing the web applications. For backend testing, you need to design your own test cases. Maybe you can use the unit test testing framework, and you can use different libraries corresponding to your requirements. Supposedly, if you have an application built in using Elasticsearch, so you can use PyElasticsearch module and to extract that whatever is the data and test accordingly. Selenium would not help you with the backend testing. It will help you with the web application testing. Selenium is more for acceptance testing and functional testing.
Yeah, so the thing is that backend tests are easier to maintain because they don't involve all these front-end tags, and front-end can change a lot more than the backend.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to do backend testing. So what I'm really trying to get to is that why should I do front-end testing? Exactly what type of bugs will Selenium help me catch that backend testing combined with a little bit of manual front-end testing will not?
Supposedly, you have a huge test data with respect to a sample application that I showed you with search. There could be a case wherein a highlighted keyword is not what is according to expected. So it is not possible to do it manually, that you loop through all your test data and verify that whether each highlight is correct or not. So Selenium will help you, the automated testing done using Selenium will help you find that particular bug, that this is the highlight wherein your result is not correct.